talked about karyotypes and sort of DNA that makes up our chromosomes, has the instructions to build us. But now we're going to get into some more specifics about how certain traits are inherited and how different parents contribute to that, and how that results in things like eye color, hair color, and so forth. So when we talk about genetics, we are studying what's called heredity. What does that mean? What does it mean if something is hereditary? I'm sure you've heard the term before, Joe.
It's in your genes.
Okay, yeah, that it's in your genes. If a disease is hereditary, what does that mean? Runs in the family, could be passed on from parents to their offspring. Okay, so genetic information gets passed from parents to their offspring through the chromosomes, and that's what heredity is, the passing on of these traits, these characteristics. So we're going to start just a little bit with some history here of genetics. This is a picture here of Gregor Mendel. He lived in the 19th century. He was Austrian, which is different from Australia.
Oh my gosh, I watched the movie about that.
Austria is in Eastern Europe. Australia is a continent in the...
Really?
Yeah.
I'm really good at that.
Austria, yes, is in Europe.
It's in the sounds. It's in the sounds.
Australia is a continent, yes. All right. So Gregor Mendel, guys, he was a monk. He was a religious person, but he had time on his hands, and in this extra time, his hobby was botany with plants. And so he did his research on plants, specifically on pea plants. And because of his research and what he came up with, he's known as the father of genetics.
Cool.
He did his work before anybody knew anything about DNA or chromosomes or genes. His work was before all of that. And so he still, though, the ideas he came up with, we still use today. And we still know that many traits follow the rules that Mendel set up. So what he did is, he basically was working with pea plants, and he crossed them. He bred them together. And he would take parents with certain traits that he observed. We'll talk about that on the next slide. He took plants with certain characteristics, crossed them together, and he looked at what their offspring are like. And he started to see that inheritance followed certain rules. Okay? So the things he looked at in his pea plants were some things that were simple to observe. He could see very easily the height of a plant, the color of the peas, the color of the flowers, the texture of the seeds. These are things that vary between pea plants, and he used these things to research how traits can be inherited. And most importantly, he did this thousands and thousands of times and kept very good data. He had notebook after notebook filled with his observation about what the original plants were like, what the offspring were like. And he started to see patterns. He started to see that there were certain rules that were followed. Eventually, his conclusions, there's sort of a few parts to it, but we're not going to get into the details. But eventually, he came up with the idea that these traits that he was looking at, they like the height of the plant, the color of the flowers, and so forth, they were caused by two, what he called factors. Now, today we know that they're called genes. We call them genes. That these traits were controlled by two different genes for each trait, and one of them came from, one came from where? Where did these genes come from?
The plant.
Well, yeah, but where did they get them from, Jared? The parents, yes. So one gene came from the mother, one from the father, one factor from each parent, because each parent contributes one of each chromosome when they make gametes, when they make sex cells.
Wait, but a plant's not born.
We'll talk
right?
about this.
Okay.
We'll talk about it. Yeah. It's our next slide.
I was confused.
All right, so yeah, it's a question. It's a good question. So we don't generally think about it this way. Who's grown peas in their backyard?
I have.
or even tomatoes or something. Probably a lot of them. Yeah. So let's talk about these. What does a pea plant look like?
It's like has like a tree, but it has like the pea pods on the tree.
I don't know about a tree. Ready?
It's kind of like this stem that kind of like goes along.
Yeah, what did you say, Olivia? It's like a vine, okay? Makes leaves, grabs onto things, and then, but what before they are pea pods, what do they start off as?
They're just like tiny flowers.
Flowers. They start as flowers. All right. Flowers. Flowers are actually the reproductive organs of plants.
Ew. Ew.
So you give your mom a nice big bouquet of flowers on Mother's Day. What you are really presenting her with is a collection, a bundle of reproductive organs, maybe both male and female.
Do you think
That's what flowers are.
I did not know that, and I did not need to.
Flowers and other plants do reproduce sexually. Yeah, we talked about this before. About to tell you. So when you guys, look at a flower carefully, like if you have this spring, maybe tulips are growing in your yard. If you look at a tulip, it's like a big flower. You can see inside of it pretty easily. Well, if you ever look closely at a flower like that, what you'll see are these little stalks, and then there's like an oval part at the end. It's kind of powdery, kind of a rough texture at the end. Those are, they contain pollen at the end. Those are the male reproductive organs of a flower. And they produce pollen. And really what pollen is, it's the male reproductive cell. It is the equivalent of sperm
I just
cells.
got pollen all over me today.
Yeah, pollen. Actually, it wasn't pollen. We'll talk about that too.
It was though.
In the spring, when you come out and the trees are flowering, and there may be like green powder coating like your driveway or cars, that's basically plant sperm. That's pollen.
I'm allergic.
Also,
I know I'm allergic.
yeah, a lot of people are. Also in the flower, all right guys, listen, is the female reproductive organ. It's called a pistil. It has a pointy end. At the end is the stigma. Inside of that, there are ovules, which are basically egg cells. That's the female game. No, I'll talk about that in a minute. So what happens is as pollen sort of blows through the air, or maybe sometimes animals or insects bring it, when a little tiny pollen cell lands on the stigma of a flower, it starts to grow a tube which goes into the ovary and then fertilizes one of these ovules. Basically, the chromosomes from the pollen grain combined with chromosomes from the egg cell, and then that ovule turns into a seed. That's what a seed is, basically a plant embryo. Okay? Now often what happens then, in many plants, the ovary of the plant changes. So where do you find seeds often? In fruit. Because in many plants, once the egg cells fertilize, once it develops into the embryo, which is a seed, the ovary ripens into what we call a fruit. So if you bite into an apple, you're biting into the ripened ovary, and inside of there are embryos of that plant, which are the seeds. So, how is this an adaptation?
I know.
How is Karima? How is the ovary ripening into fruit? How is that an adaptation for the species?
Oh, so like when the seeds fall out, it spreads more and it grows more.
Yeah, it's for dispersal of seeds because it's not so much for humans, but those fruits originated because when animals eat and consume the fruit, oftentimes the seeds go through their digestive tract and the animal takes it and is somewhere else, a few hours later. When those seeds leave their body and their waste, then the seeds have dispersed to somewhere else and the population can spread. So this is an adaptation to spread out the species. All right. So what Mendel would do is he'd take a tiny paintbrush. Let's say he had two plants that he wanted to breed together. He'd take a tiny little paintbrush. He'd get some pollen grains on the end from one plant. He'd put it on the stigma of another pea plant. It would grow. He'd collect the seeds that formed, and then he would grow them, and he would observe what traits there were in the offspring. So he knew the two parents he started with, what they were like, and he collected the seeds, grew the plants, so he could observe the traits of the offspring. So he did this thousands and thousands of times, very carefully recording characteristics of the parents, characteristics of the offspring, and he started to come up with his conclusions. Joe?
Did he die of any particular disease?
I don't know.
He died at age 60.
Oh, did he? No, I didn't notice that, but no, I don't know. Maggie?
So when they're talking about the animals and how like the seeds come out in their waist, would like a flower just pop out of their? Oh my god!
A flower? No, the seeds. The seeds
I
come
know,
out.
but like it would like.
Then the seed goes into the ground and grows from there.
When I was little, I thought if I ate seeds, something would grow.
Yeah, like watermelons.
Yeah.
Some animals, some plants, their seeds, plants have lots of adaptations to seed dispersal. Some will not germinate or start to grow until they've gone through the digestive tract of an animal. Some won't grow until they've been through a fire. Like species that live in areas where there's commonly forest fires, the cones, they're usually pine cones, they don't open up and start to germinate unless there's a fire. And that's their adaptation to surviving in an environment where there may be common fires. It's the way for the species to stay alive. Because after the fire, even if the trees have been destroyed, the pine cones open up and disperse their seeds. Christian?
Could you just burn one?
Excuse me?
Could you just burn one?
You could put it in the fire and get the seeds up. Yep. All right, so let's talk about how this relates to genetics. So, as we know, in humans, 23 chromosomes are in a sperm cell, 23 in the egg, for the total of 46 in the zygote. Okay, so again, each gamete is carrying one of the chromosomes that are going to form a pair, and they're going to determine the traits of that offspring. So these genes, we call them genes today. Mendel didn't know they were genes, he didn't know about DNA, but today we know Mendel was correct. Many traits are controlled by two genes, and they sort of come in two forms. We talk about genes for many traits. There's a dominant version and a recessive version. The dominant version, you can kind of think of it as the stronger form. And the recessive is sort of the weaker form of the trait.
Isn't like, because mom told me about like brown eyes or like down.
Yes. Yep. And so when we talk about genetics over the next week or so, we use letters to represent the genes. And whenever we're talking about a dominant gene, okay, we write it as a capital letter. Dominant genes always get a capital letter. For example, if we're talking about a tall pea plant and tall is the dominant trait, we would use a capital T for it. Because tall is dominant. The recessive form, we use a lowercase letter. So the recessive form for the height of a pea plant is short. What letter do you think we should use?
S?
We would think so,
Oh, no.
but we don't.
T.
We use a T. We still use a T, but we use the lowercase t to show that it's just a different version of the same trait, height. So if a pea plant has two genes for height, there's three possible combinations you could get. There's pure dominant. Pure dominant, what do you think that means? What two letters does it have?
T and T.
Well, they're all T's, yeah.
Oh,
But
X and X.
no, T
I'm
and T, right?
confused.
Christina?
Two capital T's.
Two capital T's. Pure meaning the same. Dominant meaning it has the dominant version. So pure dominant has two big T's. Pure recessive. Bring up.
Two lowercase.
Yeah, it has two lowercase t's. And then, what's the one we're missing? Yeah, we're missing a hybrid, which is when there's one dominant gene and one recessive.
Can I be a hybrid? Isn't that a car?
Now,
And the golf.
an important thing to, take care of yourself there, yeah. That's fine.
Thanks.
So, these traits are sort of either or. So if a pea plant had two big T genes, is it going to be tall or short?
I don't know.
Tall.
Tall. Tall is the dominant. Okay. Two big T's, therefore it's going to be tall. How about this plant?
Short.
Yeah, how about this?
Medium.
No.
No, it's tall.
Why tall?
Because it's the first one.
Right, because if it ever gets one dominant gene, that's the one that shows through. So it's not medium in height.
Why is there two T's?
You would think it would
Because it carries that recessive gene, but that's not the one that shows through. Whenever a plant has one of the dominant genes, that's the one that comes through. Joe?
Can you get like your genes tested?
Sometimes, for certain characteristics you can. Jared?
Do you always use genes?
For, if you're talking about plant height, because you're talking tall or short, no. You switch it, so I could use, if I'm talking about brown eyes, I could use a capital B.
I got brown eyes.
Whatever trait, you usually use the first letter of the dominant trait.
What would you use for blue eyes?
Then you use a lowercase d, because that's the recessive. All right,
Brown is down.
so we need to talk about some more definitions. All right, guys, listen.
Take your head, all that.
Bobby.
Well, let's get my.
So two words, phenotype and genotype. So phenotype is a word for the physical appearance of something. How do the genes sort of show through? When we are talking about an organism's genotype, we're talking about, it's going to be a word, like it's tall, she has blonde hair. Okay? It's a description of the appearance. However, if we're talking about the genotype, we're talking about the genes, that the genetic makeup that these species has. And it's going to be letters like big T, little t, or little b, little b. So we're specifying exactly which genes that individual has. All right, so I have here two plants, two pea plants, and I'm interested in their height. Tell me, what would you say is the phenotype of this plant? Raise your hand, please. The phenotype. Abby? Well, we're talking about height.
Oh, height. Tall.
Yeah, this is a tall plant. That's its phenotype.
I like the color.
What genotypes might it have? Maggie?
Capital T.
Two capital T's. Is there any other combination?
Or one capital T and a lowercase.
Yes, either one will result in a tall pea plant.
It's a pretty flower.
How about this pea plant? What about its phenotype? Grima?
Short.
It's short.
I know.
How about its genotype, Brandon? Two up? Yeah, two lowercase t's. That's the only genotype that will give you a short pea plant, if you have two of the recessive genes. Okay?
So what if, like, there's a plant and it had a lowercase t and then a capital T?
Yeah, the order is a good question. The order doesn't matter. As long as there's one dominant gene, that's what shows through. We always usually write the capital letter first. That's just a convention, but it doesn't make any difference.
Will we get it wrong?
No.
Good.
All right, so now our last thing to talk about is how we can predict the offspring of two parents. We do this using what's called a Punnett Square. Mendel didn't come up with this. A guy named Reginald Punnett did.
I like Reginald.
I like
But our Punnett Square allows you, if you know the genotype of two parents, to predict what their offspring might be like. So let's go through a few examples. So here I'm telling you, I have two pea plants. One is big T for plant height. It's tall. Another one is little t, little t.
Lowercase of
What is that?
what?
What's its phenotype?
T.
Phenotype.
Short. Tall.
Short. It's two little t.
I thought you said the two big T's.
Nope. All right. So to do a Punnett Square, showing what happens if I have these parents, I take one parent and I put it on top, their genotype. So I'll do big T on top. I take the other parent's genotype and I put them on the side, on the left. Little t, little t. And then I just fill in each box according to what connects. So this is going to get a big T from the top and a little t from the side.
That's cute.
Down here, same thing. It's going to get a big T from the top, a little t from the side.
So they're going to be the same exact thing for the thing with
This
the
one,
little thing.
same thing,
Yeah.
and this one as well. And so my Punnett Square is finished. And now what you can do is look at the results. You look at the 4 squares. Each one represents a 25% chance that the offspring will be like that. So in this case, what possible genotypes do you get from those 2 parents? Genotypes. What possible do you get? Yeah, there's only one possibility, right? They're all the same in this one. They're all big T, little t. So what percent would that be?
100.
100% of the offspring in this case are going to have a big T, little t. How about what possible phenotypes are there going to be in these offspring? Maggie?
Tall.
Tall. 100% of them are going to be tall. There's no short plants reproduced here.
Could it possibly, could it ever?
No. So in this case, if they have these parents, they will never produce a short offspring. All of their offspring are called hybrid. Okay? Yes, Christina?
Why are sometimes if there's a tall parent and a short parent, they'll have a short kid?
Excuse me.
So let's we're gonna do the next one. So let's do the next one. So now, if I look at my next Punnett Square, now I have big T, little t. Is that one gonna be tall or short?
It's gonna be short.
Tall.
Tall.
Tall. Has a big TG. What about this one?
Short.
So again, this is another cross of a tall plant with a short plant, just like before. But you're gonna see when we do the Punnett Square, we end up with different results.
Does this result in humans?
So yes, one parent goes on top, big T, little t. The other parent goes on the side. All right, Olivia, what's going to go in this box? Big T from the top, little t from the side. Sarah, it's going to go down here. Yes. Karina, what's going to go here? Yeah, little t from the top, little t from the side. Juliana, how about here? Yes. Okay.
Why was also?
So our Punnett Squares done. Now let's look at our results. What possible genotypes do we get? Andrew? Yeah, we get 2 possible genotypes now. Big T, and little t, little t. Jared, what percent of the offspring are going to be big T, little t?
50%.
Yes, 50% are going to be that, 50% are little t, little t. 2 out of 4 and 2 out of 4. All right, what possible phenotypes do we have, Christina?
Tall 50% and short 50%.
Exactly. 2 out of the 4 are tall, 2 out of the 4 are short. So Christina just asked the question, how could you have a tall plant and a short plant, but they get some short offspring? This is how. The one that was tall happened to be a hybrid, and when that happens, half the time you get tall plants, half the time you get short plants. Okay?
Is this does this the same thing go for humans?
It applies for some things for humans, yes. Not all.
Can I be a hybrid?
I don't know. All right, our last, now if you guys understand, I want you to finish this last Punnett Square.
100.
So go ahead. Now we have 2 hybrids are being crossed, 2 tall plants.
I'm a hybrid.
Could you have 2 tall plants and get a short plant as an offspring?
No,
Let's see, go ahead and do it.
I'm not sure. Yes. This is so weird.
Let me show you guys the video.
A big one.
All right.
Wait.
Oh no, you guys aren't around the video yet. That's all right. All right, so let's do this Punnett Square. What's going to go on the top here, Bobby? Well, yeah.
Uppercase T.
And,
Lowercase.
yep, one parent's genotype goes on top. Uppercase, lowercase. Awesome. What goes here?
Uppercase, lowercase.
Again, same thing, yep. Okay, let's fill in here. Patrick, what should go here?
Both uppercase.
Yep. Christian, what should go here?
Uppercase T and lowercase t.
Yep. Karina, what should go here? What's that? Well, what's it get from the top? What gets it get from the side? What goes here, Joe? Yeah, so now Punnett Squares filled in. Olivia or Brett, what possible genotypes do we end up with on this Punnett Square?
Big T, little t, big T, big T, little t, little t.
Yes, we end up with all three combinations. Olivia, what percent are going to be big T, big T? What's your answer? Yeah, 1 out of the 4 is big T, big T. It's 25%. Sarah, what percent are going to be big T, little t? Yep. Bobby, what percent are going to be little t, little t?
25%.
Yeah. 25% are pure dominant, 50% hybrid, 25% pure recessive. And again, what Mendel found was that every time he crossed 2 hybrid parents, he always ended up, no matter what trait it was, with the same ratio. Okay? 25%, 50%, 25%. All right, how about phenotypes? Juliana, what possible phenotypes do we have? Well, we don't need any letters. All I need is words. Yeah, tall and short. There's some plants are tall, some are short. What percent of each, Maggie?
Tall is 75%, short is 24%.
Yes, so these 3 are all going to be tall, and this one short. So that's 75% tall.
But there's no chance.
Yeah, so there is a chance that these 2 tall parents could produce a short offspring. One more for you. You guys do this. It's now a different trait. No more T's. Now we're using Y's. This is about the color of the pea. Y is for yellow, that is dominant. Green is recessive. So go ahead, fill in the Punnett Square for a cross between these 2 parents. Austin. Oh no, and I just asked you the same kind of question. Patrick, what goes on top? What is it?
Capital Y.
2 capital Y's. What goes on the side, Karima? Yes. What goes here, Austin?
Uppercase Y, lowercase y.
What goes here, Christina?
Uppercase Y, lowercase y.
Okay. Yep. Bobby?
Lowercase y. Wait, no. Wait. Oh, sorry, uppercase y, lowercase y.
What goes here, Sarah?
Uppercase Y, lowercase.
Yes. Okay, in this case, after looking at the results, what percent of these offspring will be yellow, Shay? No?
Yellow? Oh, I don't know.
Jared?
100%.
100% yellow, 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 yellow. All of them would be yellow. 0% would be green.